Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hear Me Out, the show where we talk about hard topics through a Christian lens. My name is Chino.
And my name is Kongwa, and we are your hosts for tonight.
Last week we talked about if there are any circumstances where abortion could be justified.
We heard some discussions from students as well as some biblical insight from Dr. Teresa Blakeney.
If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out right after finishing this episode. Today we're going to be talking about whether or not the news is reliable.
Is everything that we hear from our news sources trustworthy, or is the information given to us slanted or opinionated in some way?
We will be talking about instances of fake news and when news is reported incorrectly, and talk about strategies on how to find good news sources.
So stay tuned and hear me out.
Get a lot of your information about what's going on in the world from?
I would say probably social media or the people that I'm surrounded by.
Well, mostly Fox News.
Personally, I don't really watch the news. My news media will be more like what comes out on Snapchat or TikTok.
I most definitely watch the news every day on Snapchat.
So whenever you do watch the news, how reliable do you think the information that you're receiving is?
So I usually watch multiple ones from different point of views and standpoints, because I really don't trust, just one view,
Personally, I think a lot of times the news is pretty negative and also very biased.
I just kind of judge it for myself, and I try to see whether people are talking out of emotions, and then I just make my own personal opinions.
I actually reposted something on my Instagram a few weeks ago. I thought it was legit, when I reposted, but the fact checkers or whatever, they checked it and they said, oh, this is actually really false information. This post immediately got deleted.
Everyone has a different worldview, and so when you look at everyone's different worldview, you really get a story for the story itself.
People don't really question statistics that often, they just believe the numbers that they hear.
You have to look at all the options and then make your own understanding of what you see.
So we have heard from your peers about what they think about news media. We're going to continue this conversation back in the studio after this short break.
Welcome back, everybody. Today I have with me our Director of Media Services, John Cookman, and our Assistant Director, James Lex. Thank you guys both for joining us. If you guys are ready, we're going to jump in. So the first question I've got for you guys, John, I'll ask you first, is what is your primary source of news media?
Social media.
Okay. Why?
That's a difficult question. I would just say I see a lot of, it's a quick place to get all the aggregated so-called news. And I don't know what exactly you mean by news, but I'm just going to assume, the current events of the new day. So I like to go to social media, Twitter, Facebook, because you're going to see whatever is riling up my friends' constituency. They will post that, and I'll be able to look at it, follow the rabbit trail that they usually lead, which is normally, tap on the news article or watch this, and then I go from there.
James, what's your primary source of getting the news and media, like current events, and why?
Well, like many people, I used to get it on television, local news broadcasts, but that get older, I moved on. I didn't have a cable TV, so I had to move on to other ways. And social media was the way I did that. And just scrolling through, finding what's going on with my friends, you end up finding what's going on in the world. These apps have advanced now, so there's an explore area. So you just start going through there, seeing headlines. I like to get my source from a lot of different, not just sources, but from the people themselves. I think people are more interesting than just an article or a video. I like to see what my friend's take is on a particular topic. And usually you can start figuring out certain friends are going to have a certain spin on anything. It's going to spin a certain way, and other friends it's going to always spin another way. And I can tell from the way it spins I can usually read between the lines and figure out what's happening. But social media is usually the first place. But similar to John, I don't take that as the Bible. It is simply a starting point, really, to understanding what has happened or sometimes what didn't happen.
Do you think fake news can influence people negatively?
Well, there's
such as like,
give me an example.
not necessarily like the Babylon Bee, not necessarily satire, but maybe just like incorrect news. How do you think that
incorrect reporting. So incorrect information is put in a headline or in a news cycle, and it doesn't get corrected, or it does get corrected, because that kind of makes a difference.
Yeah. So let's say it's like not corrected, and the typical fake news. How do you think that influences people negatively?
Well, I don't know that it necessarily always does influence people negatively. I think people have a preconceived bias of say, political candidate, a particular issue, and when the news comes, they just go, "Yep, there it is. I've been saying it all along. That's it." And then it becomes, when they go, "Oh, well, this didn't really happen," or we checked on this study. It turns out they did it over the phone, and it wasn't actual real people in the study. And they go, "Well, that's just this. It's still true." Like, people have a preconceived bias to whatever the issue is. So I don't think fake news makes a significant difference. I don't think it's that negative. I think it just confirms what people already believe. And because how many times have you seen something where they said, "Oh, hey, this didn't really happen," and they go, "Well, this person would do something like that."
Yeah.
And nothing has really changed. I think they stay right where they are. So I'd say people stay in neutral. So I don't think it's negative. I think it's just you are where you are. It's just chum for the waters of the internet.
Okay. So there, in 1938, there was a big radio broadcast, and it was a reading.
Famous one.
Yeah, it was a reading of the book War of the Worlds by Orson Welles, and it caused a huge panic.
Yeah.
And so maybe not necessarily going to that extreme of fake news, but John, how do you think that fake news or maybe untrue news can affect people negatively? Maybe like right off the bat, instead of doing the deconstruction of a Facebook post, do you think that those initial posts or news can affect people negatively?
If you're talking about the outcome of the way they live as being the negative consequences, then yes. Fake news is implicative of an intentional perspective. So fake news is not incorrect news just for the sake of being a misreport or an inaccurate report. But fake news now, the term fake news is upon us over the last 3 or 4 years, and it is a sentiment that is expressed that, oh, that's fake news, that is intentionally trying to deceive you. Yeah. And that is different than the way you look at news, trying to discern whether it was accurate or inaccurate. So there's two perspectives there. If I hear someone say it's fake news, then I'm immediately going to, the way I think is that someone is intentionally trying to mislead me or someone else. And I would, if it just depends on what your worldview is and what your outlook is. If I disagree with that news, then I would think that it is going to have a negative consequence attached to it.
Yeah, you said you kind of talked about intentionally misleading news. Do you think that some of the news today or fake news today, it intentionally tries to change and affect our worldview?
Yes, and again, we're loosely talking about news.
Yeah.
And I'm going to preface for my side at least, it's information, and we've come a long way away from the actual news story or the idea of news. So much information, we're being bombarded day in and day out. You pick up your phone and there is news. When you open social media, it's always news.
Yeah.
Something's new. It's more personal. A lot of times it's not just world news or US news. Social media really gets to the news of your friends, your family. And when we're talking about big ideas, the news or the information that is intentionally misleading. Right now, the hot topic is the political news of the day. So I would say yes, it is trying to create an intentional guidance perspective. They're trying to guide my mind to think a certain way. And that is why they are intentionally designing that news, that information, to get me to get on board with whatever it is that they want me to get on board with.
And you think that happens with like our typical news broadcasters like CNN?
I do.
Yeah.
I think it's all manipulation. It has an agenda.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Do I think it has an agenda?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. James, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think news broadcast news that's put out is trying to just affect our worldview?
Oh, 100%. They all do it. They do it differently, though. All the different networks that were on the cable networks, we'll talk about that. But even those cable networks, they flow down into other areas of social media through short form videos, through articles. It's all an agenda from some kind of a executive producer, and it varies. So MSNBC is going to lean left and Fox News will lean right. What we have to do, and going back to John's deconstructionalism, we have to go and look at both and see how they interpret the same event. You could take an exact same event, and the one side will pick this nitpicky thing and make it seem like that was the entire event that was an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going to say, yes, there's an agenda.
That actually kind of leads us really well into our last thing here. And so if you guys quickly could give us your last advice. What is your advice for finding a reliable news source? Or what's your advice for finding the truth?
Me first?
Yeah, please.
Well, I go on historical perspective, past performance. If you have a trusted source, that means historically they've built up a trust. You've built that bridge of trust, and you acknowledge that as accurate information that would come from a person or a news outlet, a writer. And for me, I kind of start there as my midline. And like I said, I have trust issues. I don't just believe anything that I'm told. So I will historically go, well, they seem to be accurate. And I will take that information and then just fill it out and use common sense approach, research, fact checking is the modern term for that, I guess. But verify is a big word I would like to use there. Yeah, okay. I'd like to verify if it's true or not.
Yeah. James, your kind of closing advice?
I started by going to, say, a website or something. I Google News, and you just see what are the top clicks. What are people clicking on? What are people reading? What are people watching? Podcasts, look at the most listened to podcasts. But I've kind of found that the best news sources are independent people like you and me who look at what CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC are putting out. They have their own take on it. So there are people on the right and the left and the center, all available on YouTube. And I've been ingesting that information more. I have stayed away from the flat Earth stuff and some of these other conspiracy theories for the feeble-minded. But for the most part, you sometimes end up with that when you open it up, and anyone can post whatever they want. You can find those people very easily. And there's the whole trap of recommended videos, right? But if you get in the right train, you follow people that are willing to call out the left and the right and the middle. You're going to get a much more accurate perception of.
Also, along with that thought, Sir James, you got to know what you're looking at. A lot of people call news when it's just an opinion. Yeah. So you talked about MSNBC, even Fox, CNN. They are not the mainstream media outlets, but they're opinion outlets. They're pundits for the most part.
Right. Yeah.
Now they do have some news reporting
for 2 minutes, and then it's 6 minutes of let's debate what really happened.
So you got to know what you're watching and what the framework of how that is built. Yeah. And if it's an opinion, you take it as an opinion, and then you investigate for yourself.
You do your research.
But nowadays, because of the agenda-driven media, it's all opinionated. And that's why I say I could go to Facebook. I don't need to go to the mainstream media to find out. I'll just go and find out what everybody else's opinion about it, and then begin to use a balancing common sense approach.
And find it out. That's awesome. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for your guys' perspectives and for your advice on the news and finding truth. It's very much appreciated. But we're going to be taking a quick break, but we'll be back in just a few minutes.
And now it's time for Dumb Debates with Tim, the part of the show where Tim has a dumb debate. So without further ado, Dumb Debates with Tim.
So, I was thinking the other day, and I was thinking about if someone were to drop a bar of soap onto the ground, is that soap now contaminated, dirty, or is the floor that it fell on clean? What do you think?
That spot on the floor is clean.
The spot is clean.
Yeah, it's clean.
I'm going to say the soap is dirty.
False.
No, you're wrong.
Okay.
You're clearly wrong.
Explain how I'm wrong.
Okay, you're wrong because we both lived in Collins before. We both had communal showers. We've seen those floors, man. We've seen the hair that gets in the drain from men. Facts. If anything hits that ground, I am not going to pick it back up. That's the rule.
Dear Heavenly Father.
Facts.
God,
Check this out.
Okay.
So you're telling me that if you drop your bar of soap while you're taking a shower, you're not going to pick up that bar of soap and rinse it off?
The soap is now the showers.
I'm not, I don't, if I drop soap,
You ain't picking it up?
I'm not picking it up.
That's cap.
I don't even use bars of soap. I don't use bars of soap.
That's nasty. Oh, you use gel.
I use gel.
Okay, that's fine. But the topic is a bar of soap.
That's facts. That's facts.
We're talking about bars of soap.
Okay.
Back in the day when we were kids, we were using bars of soap.
We use bars of soap.
We ain't had the luxury to have gel.
Or if we go to a hotel.
The hotel
showers.
Bars of soap.
Bars. Not even a bar. It's a cube.
So you think that the floor is going to be
That's clean on the floor. It's not going to affect the soap.
I think that soap is dirty. Especially if it's a communal bathroom. If we're dealing with showers, they're supposed to bleach those things like every day.
So how strongly do you believe this?
How strongly do I believe? I believe that I am objectively correct compared to Mufasa.
So
you think he could change your mind?
All right, change my mind. Persuade me.
All right, I will change your mind this way. Aside from the fact that everyone uses gel, no one uses bars of soap.
But change my mind in a way that it isn't related to Collins.
In a way that isn't related to Collins?
Yeah.
Okay, how often do you clean your shower?
How often do?
Oh.
Back home?
Yeah.
Back home, I have to clean the shower.
Where you live right now?
Where I live right now?
Where you live right now?
Right now.
How often you clean your shower?
I'm not gonna cap. I don't clean that shower.
And I wouldn't trust that shower.
I would never trust your shower.
But it's not communal.
I'm not gonna share your shower.
It's not communal.
I'm definitely not letting my soap fall in your shower.
It's not communal. It's not.
I'm just not using this shower.
I'm not going in your. I'm not going anywhere.
I'll go 3 days, no problem. But
for days,
I'll go for days before I use your shower.
Oh no! Okay,
bro, you don't clean
your shower.
Hold on.
All right.
If the soap falls on the floor could be clean, but also the soap could get dirty. All right, let's just disagree. All right,
we'll disagree.
Agree to disagree.
That's cap. I can't agree to disagree.
Okay, be quiet. You guys tell us in the comment section what you think. Is the soap now dirty or is the floor now clean?
The floor.
Go comment.
Clean. Clean. Go ahead and say it right now.
Dirty.
It's clean.
No way.
Clean.
Welcome back, everyone. We've heard some discussion and opinions from alumni and some staff on campus about whether or not what we hear from the news is reliable.
So how reliable is the news and how trustworthy is it? Is it opinionated? Is it slanted? Is it biased? And are there ways to know what news is the most reliable?
To wrap it up, we're going to Positivity with a Prof to see what Dr. Clancy Hayes has to say about our discussion.
Back in the day when I was growing up, we lived in a town where there were two newspapers. One was called the Republican Journal and the other one was called the Democrat Independent. It was pretty easy during that time period to know where the slant of the publisher was in regard to the news that was given to us. That was kind of the way it was in America as far as news was concerned for over a century. You would go into New York City and there would be a Republican newspaper and there'd be a Democratic newspaper, and the slant on it, the information on it all favored who they wanted to support as far as their political party was concerned. Today we've moved into a different world, and that world is the world of social media. And one of the things that you find with social media when it comes to the news is that it allows the individual to be the arbiter of truth. There is no necessarily single source of truth when it comes to an individual that is communicating what they think about the news and how they portray the news. So a 10-year-old who is decent with video equipment could actually come across almost as authoritative as somebody that had been fully schooled in the area. See, the ultimate question when it comes to news, is there a single source of truth or is everything arbitrary? And then you have to ask the question, if you think there may be a single source of truth, who is that truth? Does a journalism degree equal authority? So that when a journalist gives a news story with their opinion, do I believe them because journalism equals authority? Does a ministerial degree equal authority? If a pastor says something, tells you something, gives you a slant on the news, do I believe it because of what they said? Is my opinion authority? That is what a lot of people today in the postmodern mindset would argue. But the question that I need to ask is that the ultimate source of authority? Is the Bible the ultimate source of authority? Is the Quran the ultimate source of authority? Is Marxism the ultimate source of authority? See, all of those things you have to answer that question before you can actually interpret the news in an appropriate fashion. The question is there a truth? And I'm going to argue that yes, there is a truth. And truth is built on a standard. It's not built on a worldview. If there is truth, there's only one truth. And Jesus says he is the truth. He's the way. He's the truth. And so we have to ask ourselves as Christians, as we look at the news from whatever source it is, how does it line up with what the Bible says? And there are some things that are going to line up straight up, but there are going to be other things that we're going to have to take a little bit of an investigation and see what the world has to say. You have to determine bias and the intent, because they are the key things for us to successfully navigate news and opinion and other news outlets. Because as Christians, we're not staying true to the Republican Journal, and we're not staying true to the Democrat Independent. What we need to stay true to is the truth of God's Word. There are elements there that we need to match up to if we're going to fully understand and be able to look at the news from a Christian worldview.
Thank you so much for hearing what we have to say, but we would like to know what you have to say about this topic.
So leave a comment down below and keep the conversation going with your friends and family. We will see you guys next week where we'll be discussing the election and which side we should vote on as Christians. Bye.
Bye.